Hi, this is Brian Stevens from SPYPOINT, and I'm excited to talk with Kinion Bankston, who you may know from his successful social media platform, Southern Boys Outdoors, and Bill Lawson, who has been a host of Ultimate Bow Hunting TV, Extreme Depths Outdoors, and a SPYPOINT ambassador. Today we're going to talk about all things bow fishing and share some stories along the way. Hope you enjoy it. Welcome to the SPYPOINT podcast. I'm your host, Brian Stevens, and on this show, we get to talk about hunting, tactics, technology, and the inside scoop from industry pros. Follow along each month as we learn, laugh, and grow together with the passion we all have for the outdoors. This is the SPYPOINT podcast. Hey, Kinion and Billy, how you guys doing today?
Good, buddy.
Doing great. Doing great here in Louisiana.
Outstanding. Billy, how you doing down in Florida?
Doing good.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, listen, guys, summer is here, and that means bow fishing is about to get started for all of us. You know, the cool thing about bow fishing is that it's one of the fastest growing parts of archery and bow hunting, and we've done it for years together. We love it. You know, and naturally, I think a lot of hunters associate carp with bow fishing, and, you know, we know that's true. But I want to talk today with both of you about some other styles of bow fishing and other species that we've bow fished over the years, from mahi to big gator gar to redfish to catfish, gators, all that I want to talk with you guys about today.
All right.
Sounds good.
So, Kinion, we're going to start with you, my friend, down in Louisiana. One of our favorite places to bow fish with the one and only Captain Alligator. We've done it for years, and, you know, I want you to just walk people through what are some of the species and what makes Louisiana so unique and so special when it comes to bow fishing.
Down there with Southern-style bow fishing, Captain Yeager and them, they run a great operation. And one of the unique things, in the same water, you hunting catfish, big catfish, 40, 50-pound catfish, and huge alligator gar, 6-7 foot alligator gar. And then you got all the species of redfish and everything else, to all the mullet fish you can shoot. When you look in the water, it's just such a wide variety of fish. You don't know what you're going to see, whether you're going to see a 7-foot alligator, or you're going to alligator gar, or you're going to come across a 20-inch redfish, or you're going to have a big catfish laying on the bottom. So just a wide variety of different species of fish to be able to hunt and shoot.
And I know that's true. You know, and the other thing, too, there's sharks down there, too, in some of those waters. I don't remember if you remember, Kinion, that first year we were bow fishing down there, we had a little lemon shark and a bull shark that was swimming in the same waters that we were seeing alligators and big gator gar. So, like you said, just a ton of fish that you can see all in those same waters, and to me that also makes it special. Let me ask you, what's your favorite fish to bow fish down there when you think about the gator gar, the redfish, catfish, all that?
I really like the challenge of what we've done in the past of hunting those big alligator gar, and we pass on a lot of smaller gar, and just it's almost like you got to go out and you got to hunt for these big creatures, and I like that challenge of just trying to kill a huge alligator gar. And do it without getting pulled out of the boat too, right? Yeah, that's always good there, to try to stay in the boat. We all know what happened there.
I speak out of
Brian gets snatched out of the boat.
Hey, it happens sometimes,
I think that was one of the funniest things, Kinion, because, you had shot at that, and I had shot at that gar, and Brian had shot at that gar. So it was one of those things with all those lines when they got loose that one time. We didn't know who actually had the gar, because I know at one time you had him until we spun the boat around. You were hooked up, and I knew I wasn't. And then Brian had thought he'd lost that fish, and then all of a sudden that line goes tight, and there goes Brian.
Well, it was a choice between hearing Alan yell at me for losing that, $1,000 Oneida bow. And I had gotten my butt kicked the night before by you, Billy, that wasn't going to happen 2 times in a row, that I was going in after that fish one way or the other. If he wasn't coming in the boat, I'm going after him. And so the next thing I know, yes, I'm chest deep in the swamp and bayou, and all I can hear is laughing and Alan about losing his mind. And a true friend, Kinion was the only one helping me get out of the water. Billy was laughing his butt off,
I just still want to know, Kinion, did we ever find his shoes? I don't think we found his shoes.
Shoes, socks, or Costa glasses. They all gone.
They're gone. They gone.
They gone.
No, that's
no, but even down there also is, those sheephead. I mean, when we're down there bow fishing, as much as I love, that challenge, like Kinion said, of hunting those giant alligator gar. I mean, that is a challenge because, they'll fool you. And you would think that 7 foot, 180 to 200 pound alligator gar would be easy to see, easy to find. And he's not. I mean, it's crazy. It's like you'll drive right past them and not see them. But then I also love the fact that when we're down there and we're being able to bow fish the redfish and the sheephead, because you can't do that in Florida, but you can there in Louisiana. And those are both delicious fish. And to be able to bow fish those and fillet them and put them in Ziploc, that's an awesome time.
No, it is. And, a lot of times what we'll do down there is we split it up. One night we'll go after the big gator gar, and then the next night, we'll go after different water, clarity to shoot the redfish and the sheephead. And, last year, Bill, you shot a giant, gator gar. That thing was 7 foot. And I just won't forget, when you come up on one of those big fish, like you said, sometimes they'll fool you, until you're right on them. And then sometimes when you have that opportunity to kind of creep up on them, and you got to make the right shot, and then usually you got to get 2 or 3 arrows in them. But, I know when you saw that big fish, that was it's just such a sight of just seeing almost like a big telephone pole in the water.
Yeah, oh, it is. Because I remember when me and you and Kinion went our very first year, and we drove over a 7 foot plus 200 pound alligator gar, but literally you and I had never done this before, and we thought it was a log.
Yeah.
We literally thought that was a log under the water.
And
you wouldn't thought it was a fish.
Well, you would have. And Kinion, you remember what Cap Mallon said to me?
Come on, Brian.
That's instilled in my brain until I think I die.
I thought Billy was going there with the "Come on, Brian" story.
Yeah,
Come on, Brian.
Listen. We've known Alan 2 hours, and he's already chewing me out like I'm his son.
And one of the things that I found most amazing about that trip was when we left out and we went over that Mississippi River, the air temperature dropped 15 degrees. And then we're going down the Mississippi River, and this crazy coon ass, Alan Yeager, all of a sudden just turns this big airboat, and we ramp off into the marsh, like a 2 or 3 foot drop. And I was like, holy smoke, where's my life jacket?
That boy is a nut, but he knows those waters and that fishing like the back of his hand. And it is, if you've never done that, whether it's with Alan in Southern Style or it's with somebody else, you got to go down to Louisiana and just try that style of bow fishing, because it's nonstop, and
it's such a fishery.
That's
the thing is, like what Alan says, he goes, like in Florida, like our gar, we have alligator gar, we have regular gar and everything like that, but they don't get nowhere near the size of what they are up there. But what's so amazing is, and like the gar down here in Florida, you can't eat these. These are trash fish. They eat trash. But the gar in Louisiana, you can eat because they eat fresh fish. When you get back in there with Alan and you see just literally millions of live mullet just popping and jumping all over the place. It's just the amount of fish it just blows your mind. You're not even prepared for something like that.
No, and it's just it's an overload, which I also think is really unique. And we're going to transition into some of the stuff you do down in Florida, Bill. But you can fish for different species, different times of the year. You got a lot of times we'll be down there in the summer and you have redfish, but even in the winter months, the red fishing gets even better. And the catfish get even better. And then in the summer, obviously that's when we're, bow fishing a lot of the big gator gar. And what I like that Alan does too, it's like hunting deer. He's not going to shoot those, 3 and 4 foot alligator gar. He wants you to shoot those 6 and 7 footers and let those other fish have a chance to grow up and get bigger, because and they're true. They're just prehistoric, crazy looking animals with a just mouthful of teeth, and they're eating machines, but it just gives them a chance to grow up for a few years. And so he truly does try to manage that fishery the best that he can. And there's just, hundreds and hundreds of fish. So definitely something that I hope we can always do, guys, year after year, because it is one of the funnest trips that we do. I mean, we love bow fishing, but going down there is just, it's such a great time. So let's shift gears a little bit. Billy, let's go down to Florida. We're about to go to the Keys, and we're going to do, something that totally off the wall that we've been doing the last, 4 or 5 years. But talk about some of the bow fishing you do down in Florida that's different than, somebody might do in Louisiana or even in the Midwest with the carp.
Well, down here, like I say, we're fixing to go film our favorite episode of what we do every year. Is we're going to go down to Key West and we're going to bow fish mahi. We found out years ago that it's totally legal to be in federal waters and to bow fish these fish, and we've got the right guys in play and we know what to do. But when you're in, you're 30 to 80 miles out in the ocean in 2,000 foot of water, and you're bow fishing mahi, there's nothing like it. I mean, it's a total different type of bow fishing, just because, number one, when we're bow fishing in Louisiana and you're bow fishing the redfish and you're bow fishing the alligator gar, you're not dealing with what I consider the lightning bolt speed of these mahi, and the timing and how fast you have to shoot and how fast you have to be to shoot these fish. It's on a whole different skill level and a whole different fun level in my book to do what we do. Now we step out of that. I mean, I bow fish alligators when we get down here. A lot of times, like when we see a good alligator, I'll use my bow fishing bow with a line and a float, and I'll get my first line and float in a gator. That's what I do. Or we'll go for tilapia instead of like carp that they bow fish up north. We have tilapia here. That's we shoot those. But the mahi by far is your most fun that you're going to have.
Yeah, and I agree with you. It's definitely harder. It's humbling at first. Talk a little bit about, whether it's a mahi, obviously they're moving at a different speed, but more from a technical standpoint, as far as where do you aim in the water, and you think about that arrow deflection, those fish are typically going to be, 3 to 5 feet down, and, we can make that happen. But talk a little bit about, the arrow placement and where you aim to try to get an arrow in that fish.
Yeah, a lot of times what the hardest thing for most people to grasp, in my opinion, that to grasp when you're bow fishing is depth perception when you're aiming, because most of the you're not going to be shooting with sights on these bow fishing reels. It's more of an instinctive shot, and it's one of those things that you have to know that for every foot down that fish is, you have to aim underneath that fish further and further every single time for every foot that he's down. And even you have to take in consideration when you shoot down in these deep that the arrow is going to kind of float and kind of want to swim back up. And all of these things come into play. And it's one of those things when you're out there in the ocean like that, and that fish is 3, 4, 5 feet. This fish might be 1 foot. That fish might be 3 foot. The next fish might be 6 feet. You have to be able to think quickly, react quickly, and know where to aim to where you can make your shot count.
Well, and I mean, listen, that was, my biggest challenge, I think, in the beginning too. And when I missed most of my fish, and listen, I'll raise my hand and profess that, you know, you get in those slumps where you're missing, and it's typically exactly that. You're not shooting below the fish enough, and most of the shots are going to be over the fish. And sometimes, you know, that's happened to me in Louisiana, and, you know, I've missed some big fish by doing that. So I think that's a great tip of just, you know, keeping, you know, that mindset. And a lot of times you can practice in your pool or, you know, somewhere where you have clear water where you can watch that arrow do the things that it's going to do. And so, you know, from a practice standpoint, I would highly encourage somebody, especially if they're getting into this and hadn't done a lot of bow fishing, is go shoot in the pool or go shoot in some water where you can watch, you know, that arrow deflect. And so you can judge that fish based on the water depth a little bit better, and you just have more success when you're out there.
Yeah, it's difficult because the arrow does a lot of different things every time that it drops down. And it's one of those things is, yes, there is some luck involved, but once you learn, and you just have to be able to react quick and be able to look at the fish, kind of see the top of the water to the top of the fish and go, okay, he's about this deep and I need to shoot this much underneath him. But literally, especially when we're doing the mahi, you have literally a second to see that, react to it, and make your shot.
Visit spypoint.com/project to catch up on any of the podcast episodes you may have missed. Catch the latest episodes from the SPYPOINT Habitat and Hunting Series, Building Whitetails and Game Changers, or read the latest blogs covering everything in the great outdoors. Project SPYPOINT is everything you want in the outdoors in one place. spypoint.com/project. No, absolutely. And Kinion, we got to get you down there and do some of that bow fishing. And, you know, you hunt a lot of gators. Do you guys bow fish any of your gators, or is it more somewhat of the old traditional, you know, with the lines and stuff where you're hunting your gators, or do you guys, you know, put an arrow in some of them?
We hunt them just like you do where you see on Swamp People, with the traditional line on tied and ride up and shoot them with a 22 in the top of the head.
All right. Well, we're going to have to get you down to Florida to do it like Billy and I do it.
Back to the bow fishing, though, that y'all do down there with the mahi. And I hear, you know, all y'all stories and stuff all the time. But out of y'all two, which one is the best? Who kills the most out of y'all two when y'all shooting the mahi?
I mean, is that really a question, Kinion? Do you really have to ask that?
I mean, I was just wondering. I mean, I didn't know, you know.
Well,
who's really
it's the one that starts
one?
with the letter B. I mean, it's easy. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. Brian and Billy. That's right.
That's right.
Listen, I mean, if I have to be honest, you know, Billy's probably a better shot when it comes to bow fishing. But there are times when, you know, I'll get on a little bit of roll and I'll make him a little bit nervous. But I will say my boy's got some bow fishing skills, and, you know, he does it a lot down there. So I'm gonna make that my excuse, is that he just does it more often than I do.
Since you're being so nice, Brian, if I have to be honest, Kinion, yeah, I can outfish Brian.
Now, I didn't say outfish. I said outbowfish. You know, in Missouri that day too, buddy. I took you to school, some old school Florida fishing.
We don't even want to talk about Missouri, because two Louisiana boys, 10 fish rule, 2 Florida boys.
Whatever.
With ease.
Whatever. Okay. We weren't fishing with cane poles and live worms either. So let me ask both of you guys this. I mean, if you've got somebody who, you know, has thought about bow fishing, who, you know, has seen it on TV or have friends talking about it, what's your advice on, you know, I'd love from each one of you your perspective on how to get started. There's, you know, different types of equipment, you know, some a little more advanced, some, you know, good for just getting started. You know, Billy, I'll start with you. What would you suggest as far as somebody getting started in sport? And then Kinion, please jump in.
The thing that I say for everybody, the good thing about bow fishing is all the bows out there works. They all work. Now, in my opinion, if I'm a person that's getting into it, starting, and I'm trying to guide somebody into starting into it, I always say get a shorter axle to axle bow, just for the fact that when you're hunting out of a boat like that, most of the time you're on a lean rail or you're on the side of the boat. And the number one problem that any guide that I talk to and anybody that I know of in the past is guys will show up with really long axle to axle bows. And when you're in the thought and you're in that fast process of shooting a fish in the water, you're concentrating so much on that fish. What happens is your limb will slap the side of the boat or the rail, the shooting rail that you're on these bow fishing boats.
Yep.
That's my tip, because axle to axle long bows, they're great. They're easy to pull back. They don't have as much finger pinch, and I get it. But the problem is a lot of times you've got so much going on so fast and you have to react so fast that shorter axle to axle bow helps tremendously, because it limits you on having that limb slap. Because literally, if you slap that limb on the side of the boat or a rail, it will pop that bow line. It'll bounce it right off.
Yep.
My advice would be that you before you go out and spend $300, $400, $500 on a bow and buy a bow fishing boat and all that stuff, is to get hooked up with a guide and go out, and most of them will provide a bow for you to use and shoot, and just make sure you understand all about the bow fishing as much as you can when you go out with that guide. And then if you like it and you want to go back again, then maybe go out and purchase you a bow fishing rig, and then get into it that way. I wouldn't just go out and buy, spend $20,000 on a boat and everything else and say I'm going bow fishing, because it's a lot more to bow fishing than just getting in a boat and going. But I would suggest go with a guide for a few times, understand it, and make sure you really like it before you make that huge investment.
Nope, that's great. That's great advice. That's great advice. And so along that, so if we're speaking about equipment and you have guys that have different, types of bows and different reels and everything, and I think one of the other things that is important, so Bill, you talked about the bow, but I also think the reel and or the retrieving system is, something that somebody needs to think about as well. I mean, you have the old AMS style where the line and you have that whole setup versus you have, Muzzy and Zebco have a reel that's almost like a closed face reel. And I know in different applications, they have different, needs, but what's your advice on one versus the other? And I know we're going to be using something different this year down in the Keys, but give a little bit of insight on that.
Well, there's so many different reel setups out there, and the original style, like that AMS spool reel that you're talking about, that's just the line with it's kind of foolproof, which and that's great, and it works great, because heck, you and we've even shot mahi with the standard AMS type reel, where when you get into like the Zebco reels and some of the other reels, they get a little more technical, because it's a Zebco reel, just like a Zebco fishing pole. And what happens if you don't push the button on that Zebco reel when you try to cast it? It doesn't go anywhere. It's one of those things. It's for what you're doing. It's for what you're trying to do, because with the original AMS type reel, you're using a finger brake that's literally just pushing a plastic wheel up against another piece of plastic trying to hold the line when you've got a mahi running out. Where if you're using like the Zebco, if you click the reel, now you're dealing with an actual drag. There's so many different advances. Do they all work? Yes. Do they have their advantages and disadvantages? Yes. So it's kind of like anything in bow hunting or in any kind of fishing or whatever. You can get different outfits to do different things, but in the whole prospect of everything, they all do the same thing.
Yeah. No, and then I think it goes back, Kinion, to your point. If you have the chance to go on a guided fishing trip, or you've got somebody that has some equipment, go out there and try different things so you can see what works better for you. And like you said, we've shot a ton of fish with the old AMS style, spool reel, and it works, but there's downfalls with that too. I mean, if you get a fish that runs and all that line gets and that cord gets all tangled up and bunched up, then you're spending 20 minutes trying to untangle all that versus using a reel. They can obviously keep everything a little more organized and contained, but at the same time, if you don't push that button, then you're losing the arrow and, your line's going to break. So just try different things, but I just want people to know that there are a variety of different types of retrieving systems that do make a big difference in not only your skill level, but the type of fishing that you're going to be doing as well. So let me ask you this, Kinion. If you had a chance to go bow fish anything else, what would you do? I mean, you got just, a sanctuary in your backyard, in Louisiana, but is there something else that you'd love to go bow fish that you haven't yet that's on your bucket list?
I mean, I would have to jump in the boat with y'all in Florida and go out 60, 80 miles offshore and try to shoot those mahi. That's what I would have to do, because I heard y'all talk about it so much. So maybe one of these days I knock that off my bucket list and get out there with y'all.
Okay. Love it. Okay, cool. Billy, how about you?
Mine's going to have to be bow fishing a shark. I know that Captain Allen does that in Louisiana. I know you can do it some places here in Florida. I've done it with giant stingrays and stuff like that, but I just know that if you can get on a big shark, and it would kind of be, it's one of those, you might only get one or two, but that's going to be a fight. And that's going to be a long, drug out fight. But I don't think you could beat that.
Captain Allen goes out doing that in a airboat out in the Gulf of Mexico. I thought that was kind of crazy. Like, you going out in the Gulf of Mexico in an airboat?
That's Allen. That's Allen. Yeah. He's nuts.
But we all know that Captain Allen, he's a little crazy to begin with. So.
Oh.
Yep, absolutely. Well, mine would be in the right waters where you can do this legally, is to go after some big cobia. And I know down in South Florida, Bill, you've talked about doing that. And I know in some, of the waters when we're down in the Keys, we can do that. And obviously, you got to be around some structure and stuff. But to me, to get an arrow in a big cobia would be an awesome experience. I would absolutely love to do that.
Yeah, that was supposed to go on this year, but we had some stuff come up, and that is a blast, because when what you find down here in Florida, when that water kind of cools down a little bit, those cobia come up into shallower water and they just get stacked up on these structures, and they're huge. That's a huge fish, and a delicious fish.
Yep. Nope. It's so good to eat. So listen, another question I'm going to ask you guys. We'll start with you, Kinion. Talk about your coolest bow fishing experience. One of those that you will never, ever forget.
Come on, Brian.
Okay. Okay. Why does it got to be at my expense?
Say that because that's Captain Allen. Look, the Brian being pulled out of the boat, that was tops. That was one of the tops. But probably my favorite part, we were fishing all night. I mean, and we're just going and we're looking for this huge alligator gar. And we're just looking for this creature, and all of a sudden here he is. He looks like a 55-gallon drum laying on the bottom. And Brian shoots, misses, but the best part of the whole thing, not that Brian missed, and nothing taken away from Brian missing, but Captain Allen's reaction was just off the charts. I mean, it was like, come on, Brian, I got you out here. And it was just, that has to be probably one of the highlights of my bow fishing experience right there with Captain Allen and him just hollering, come on, Brian, because from that point right there, that happened 3 years ago. And still today we say, come on, Brian. We still say it. So I would have to go with that story.
Well, and that's fair enough, and I own that. I got to accept that. And the other sad part about that, it's like missing a 200-inch deer. For Allen, that fish was over 7 foot, and he was like, dude, hey, brah, you don't know what you just missed, brah. And so I distinctly still have that look in my brain that I'll have to live with the rest of my life. So thanks for bringing that up, Kinion. All right, Billy, what is your coolest bow fishing experience?
Well, my bow fishing experience, what I love to do, and it's my favorite thing to do that's different from Louisiana. Now, I love the mahi just because I love the challenge and I love the speed of the fish. But my favorite thing to do is what I do at home every year when I'm gator hunting, because I use my bow fishing bow with a line and a float, and that's to get the first arrow in him so I can chase him down. And but I literally shoot this gator on a full plane on an airboat. So I've got an airboat going, between 15, 20 mile an hour. I'm coming up on an alligator. I've literally got 1 second to go. Is he big enough? Is he not big enough? Take the shot and make the shot hit while the boat's on a full plane. And, knock on wood, I've done it every single time that if I pull it back and let it go, I've got my gator. It's such a thrill to me just because when I come up on one, he might be 3 foot, he might be 12 foot. You don't know. And that excitement, and when I do finally get to release, when I hit him and I know that I did that going 15, 20 mile an hour and I still hit my target, that's my big high.
All right, Superman, bow fisherman. How do you? Okay, and I've seen you do it, and I will give you credit. I will give you credit, Superman. I think that's his new
done
nickname.
It. It's on film. I've got the video to show it. So
the only bad part about that story right there, you should have started it off with, dude, you ain't gonna believe this, but I'm gonna tell you anything.
Yeah,
yeah, dude. Yeah.
I got my cape on, and I got my bow in my hand, and on the front of the boat, and Yeah. So let me, Billy, and how do you judge that gator? What's the one? And you do this really good. I've seen you do it, but what do you do in that split second to know that? Because there's a difference between a 7 foot and a 11-foot gator. What are you looking for when you're doing that?
Basically, most of the time when I come up on him, all I'm basically looking at is from his nostrils to his eyeballs.
Yep.
Because basically, and it's not like this all the time, but I can look at the width of his eyeballs apart, plus I can look at the length from his nose to his eyeballs. And pretty much when you can tell the snout of that alligator, pretty much it kind of goes in inches to feet. So if I come up on him and say, you've got over a foot from his nostrils to his eyeballs, that's 11 to 12 foot alligator.
Yep.
And that's how I pretty much judge it, just by the size of his head when I get up on him.
Yep. No, and we do that in general, but that's a good way, because you got to have some reference.
Yeah, nostril to snout, because when you come up on him, most of the time what we do is because you see different, we start hunting them at night like that, and you'll see his eyes across the lake will go dark. We'll get up on a plane on the boat. We'll dim all the lights. And then as soon as we get pretty close, that's when we turn the lights on. So you're right there beside him. You see him, you got your, second or two to figure out if you want to take the shot or not. You take it.
Yep. No, absolutely, man. And I've seen you do it. It's a ton of fun. I mean, I love gator hunting down there, and we got a couple of tags this year. So we'll hopefully be down there, and whether we're shooting them off a plane and being a superhero, or we're just, calling them in, or just shooting them, going slow rolling behind them. So let me tell you,
we've got it down here now where we can call them.
Yeah, I know.
Daytime. So that's a cool thing. You get them they'll come right up to the side of the boat, slap the side of the boat. But we need to get Kinion down here.
Yeah, we need to show them how to really gator hunt.
Gators with a piece of chicken and a hook. We don't do that.
No, we don't do that. We don't cane pole fish, and then we don't do that with the gators.
Well, I mean, y'all going out and y'all catching one. We going out and catching 30 and 40 in a day.
You're lucky you get those. We only get 2 tags each.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a big difference here. But talking about the gators and everything, what's bad now here in Louisiana, the gator prices has dropped so tremendously. Like you can't go out and hunt alligators anymore and make money. And there's going to be a real bad problem here in Louisiana because people are not filling their tags anymore. You know, I got a good friend, Bruce Mitchell. Y'all seen him on Swamp People. He didn't, the big swamp that he hunts, he hadn't alligator hunted it in 2 years. You know, so that all those alligators are just multiplying but the price of wild alligator has dropped so much that they're not worth the time, gas to even go out there and hunt them anymore.
That's crazy, man. That's a shame.
And
That's
we're hoping that Louisiana picks up some of the same things Florida did and either allow so many tags to give out to people to go out and hunt them at night and hunt them like y'all do on our open lakes and waters here in Louisiana. I think that would be awesome, great idea. But I don't know if that will ever come true here in Louisiana or not.
Gotcha.
But they got to do something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, let me tell you my coolest experience. I'm going to jump in on this, and that is...
we didn't even know you had a cool experience.
Apparently I do.
Pulled out of the boat.
And
pulled out of the boat.
Billy, in case you hadn't noticed, I've actually been on, all the bow fishing trips. It's not all about you. This one I didn't get pulled out of the boat, but so this is Kinion. This is our first year where we're going. If you remember, it's night 2. It's like 12:30 at night, and we are in a dry spell, and you're up on top of the rail up there, and all of a sudden I hear big gator gar, big gator gar. And if you remember, it was that big 6.5 footer, and we eased up on her. I got the first arrow in it, and then Billy followed it up, and that was our first big 6 foot plus 6.5 foot gator gar that we both shot, got in the boat, and I will never forget that. I've got that big beast. She's on my wall in my studio, and that was one of the coolest experiences that it was like all three of us took part in that. We wouldn't have found that fish unless you were up high and saw it, and it was the end of the night right before we got.
Kinion, he filmed it.
He actually hit record and filmed it, and it looked great. So that was a tag team effort with the three amigos in there. So that was my cool experience. So listen, guys, I can't thank you enough. I think we've covered a lot of bases of the different species, ragging on Brian and talking about me getting pulled out of the boat, giving people some technical tips, and then a little bit more picking on Brian. So, I think we've covered the bases today.
Yeah.
Did we pick on Brian, Kinion?
Come on, Brian.
Come on.
Come on, Brian.
Well, we hope to have some good pictures next week of some big mahi, and I will hopefully be behind one of those pictures, Kinion.
Yeah, good luck to y'all down there in Florida. Hopefully y'all have a good, successful trip, and keep count. I want to know who wins out of you and Billy there. Who kills the most? So I want to know. Well,
here's what's going to happen is Mark, my brother, is going to be part of the mix, and he does all the filming underwater for us, and he's pushing sharks away and doing all that stuff. Is when Bill and I miss, and Caleb saw this last year when we missed 3 or 4 times, and he's like seeing these big bull, mahi hanging out, and we're missing them. He just says, "Give me my spear gun," and he just takes matters in his own hands and just goes and shoot them, and just gets pissed off and puts some meat in the boat. So I'm sure that's going to happen a few times next week as well. But listen, guys, I appreciate it, and till next time we get together, you guys be safe and have a good rest of the week, my friends.
All right, go Tigers.
Go Gators.
Go Tigers. Go Tigers.
Go Tiger. All right, guys, we'll see you. Don't forget to visit spypoint.com/project for all the latest from Project SPYPOINT. And follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube for all the latest on SPYPOINT trail cameras and the outdoors.